What are you guys seeing out there? What are you guys feeling? Good, bad? Crickets. Can't be that many crickets. A lot of people still waiting. We just had a murder in Colleyville. It's not completely crickets, right? There's a house coming for sale.
It might have a few issues.
It might have some issues, that's right. Do you have to disclose that? I think you do, don't you?
No, it's not related to the property.
It's not? Are you sure?
I think you have to
How would
disclose.
you-
But the neighbors.
Surely you have to disclose somebody died on the property, right?
You don't always know suicide and not they died.
Wow, okay. I had no idea. I thought you did.
Market that.
I bet there's deals to be had in Claremont right now, though, like.
There is.
And
There wants to be a little sketch.
My pleasure.
So, yeah.
Sushi.
So you stop it. Stop it. I just didn't want to be in a place where there was murder, so. Okay,
Yeah,
so
right.
so you're hearing crickets,
Or
right?
if it's
Is that
related
what
to
you
the
guys are
house.
hearing? What about listings though? Aren't you guys seeing a lot of listings?
Yes.
Okay, we're seeing, so there is, all right, today's kind of a mixed message, I'll tell you that up front. There is still a lot of new listings coming on, and that's the thing that's gonna help get us out of this a little bit. But we are also hearing somewhat of the cricket side on the new buyers. We're not getting as many phone calls as we should be getting right now. We should be bonkers busy all the time. And we're not with that, but we are seeing better quality. So at least the people who are calling us are legit, they can afford to buy, they actually do wanna buy, they're not just trying it out. And I'll also say, some of them are coming with like offers or contracts in hand, which is kind of odd. Why are you guys letting them make offers without pre-approval letters? I still haven't figured this out. I'm like, you have a contract, but you didn't get a pre-approval? No. And the listing agent didn't even ask them for the pre-approval letter? How's that?
Are we still in business?
I don't know. That's one of the strangest things to me, and of course, they tell me the story, I'm like, sure, whatever, you probably got 12, inquiries on your credit. I pull the credit, they got nothing. So they literally got an offer accepted without a pre-approval letter and nobody looking at anything. Kind of crazy. What about cash buyers? You guys seeing cash sales?
Yeah.
So this morning's numbers just came out, especially you, because you're in that bougie team with all the high-end stuff. So 28% last month was all cash, which is about the average we've been running, anywhere between 26 and like 30%. So it's kind of right in the middle. And 31% were first-time buyers. That's still a really big number, right? So you take first-time buyers and throw in cash sales, that's 60% of the market right now. Wow. That's a huge number, in my opinion. So we haven't seen that type of number in a long time. So that's kind of what we're experiencing. So what are if you do talk to a buyer, what's their main objection right now? Is it still just interest rate?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And inventory still? I do feel like inventory is better to the point, like I'm hearing some of my contracts that are coming through, they're like, yeah, there was a lot more stuff on the market, it was easier to find something. So I'm hearing that story a little bit more. But I'll also tell you the other trend we're seeing is we have a lot of contracts that are falling out because of inspection. Like legit bad inspections. I had one last week I thought was gonna go away because it was a completely renovated home in the weather furnished area at about $270 price point, which is pretty good, but the foundation was messed up. And the seller's like, sorry, I spent all my money fixing the house, I'm not gonna do the foundation. I'm like, why would you not fix the foundation? That's just silly. They wound up getting it negotiated in finally, but he was holding firm that he wasn't gonna fix the foundation, which is just crazy. Like that should have been the very first thing you did. And of course now they're worried about, well, the plumbing work you did might get busted when they fix the foundation. I'm like, man, you did the same backwards. So, but we're seeing, Pam, you've had quite a few deals fall out because of inspections lately, haven't you?
Yes, buyers are very picky.
Yeah. Well, I think, okay, I do agree with
My
that.
buyers are picky.
Your buyers are very big. Pam has bougie buyers also.
Bougie buyers in the 200 price range.
Exactly. They are. That's exactly right. It's been interesting because I think it's sellers and buyers. And we are definitely seeing buyers come through and go, hey, I found this on the inspection, like it's minor, don't worry about it. Your agent's telling me the right thing, and then they still back out because they're really nervous. And then I had one buyer that they work for a construction company, so they took literally every item marked deficient on the inspection and they plugged it into their calculator and it came back with $35,000 worth of work and they're like, I'm out. And the agent's screaming, going, this is a clean inspection, you're fine. Good agent, 25 years in the business, knows what he's doing, couldn't give him all offense. He's like, dude, if you're gonna literally do this on every inspection, you will never buy home.
Do you think they're doing that because there's a little bit more inventory out there now?
Like, everybody's on edge.
What is it?
Yeah, everybody's on edge.
I'll tell you that buyer's response to me was, she said, I'm paying a high rate and a premium for the house. I don't want $35,000 worth of work. Fair statement. I think that's not that way.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get into a few things here really quick. So that's kind of what we're seeing. I'll tell you what, I felt like last month we talked about kind of how everything was rolling over and going the wrong direction. So I don't want to stay totally negative today, but like I said, it's kind of a mixed message all the way around. I will say this though, we're hearing more and more agents getting out of business. We're seeing more data come through that suggests that agents aren't producing right now. People are really struggling. So I want to encourage you to keep working, stay with it. There's opportunity coming. You just have to get to that point. We see it on the mortgage side too. Like there's guys bailing out the mortgage business all the time. Not as many as there are agents, so we're hoping that maybe some of them will figure it out and get out of here. But I think ultimately there's going to be way more opportunity for those of us to stick around towards the end of the year and towards the beginning of 25. So let's cover a couple of economic things here real quick. So the inflation thing, which is still driving our world. This stuff is just flat. That's I put on there. It's kind of a familiar sad song because we've just leveled out right now. You're hearing a lot of talk about the United States has really not, we've kind of plateaued on the inflation front. We haven't really gone down in a while, and you're seeing that here. Europe is doing really well. Europe is getting ready to start cutting interest rates. There's a little bit of data that suggests that inflation here in the United States may start to trickle back down again because the consumer is slowing down a smidge. And the consumer, we're still the problem, right? Y'all understand that. We keep spending all of our money. And the bottom line is we've had really cheap interest rates. Most people have a really cheap house payment if they have a house at all. Remember, almost half of all homes in the United States are owned free and clear. So if it's not free and clear, you have a 2-something or a 3-something interest rate. And a lot of people locked in their cars at really cheap interest rates at the time. And so they haven't been affected by the rise in interest rates yet, so they've been able to spend money on goods and services. That's starting to trickle down a little bit. And so if that happens, maybe we'll be by the end of the year in a position where inflation is really starting to go down. But you can see we just took out a 4 and put it in a 3, and that's not helping us a whole lot. That's not really moving the needle. In fact, we've been stuck at this 3, 4, 4, 3 for quite a while. And if we look at the stuff minus energy and food, we've been stuck in the same spot now for 6 months, either a 0.4 or a 0.3. So we finally hit that point where the Federal Reserve is saying it's not moving in the right direction anymore, and we're just going to have to keep the whole higher for longer conversation going. And the thing that I'm worried about, so this is the negative part of the presentation, look what happens after this month. We have a 0.4, and then we get to 3.2s. We get nothing higher than a 0.3. Well, we've seen, a 0.3 is the lowest we've seen lately, which means that if we don't do something here, these will either go the wrong direction or be flat completely. And the Federal Reserve is not touching interest rates until this inflation number comes down. In fact, last month we were technically right about the same. Remember we popped up to 3.5, we're now at 3.4. That's not terrible, but the bottom line is they're not going to do anything until that number comes down. Until it has a 2 in front of it, they're not going to do anything. More importantly, in fact, this just gives you a little bit of a chart from an inflationary standpoint. You can see that we've let it out here and maybe even started to trickle back up, which is part of what they're looking at. So if you saw the interest rates bump this last month, did you guys experience that? This is the reason why, because when this data came out, it spooked the markets. Now, here's the thing though, and in fact, you can even see, what's up, Joe? Thanks for coming in. I wanted this chart in here because it makes me laugh. All the guys who are industry experts and prognosticators who've been telling us all along the rates were really gonna go down the first part of the year, then they said, oh, it'll be the middle of the year. Now they're saying the latter part of the year. These are their expectations for a September rate cut. On April 1st, they thought there was a 90% chance. Then we got all the way down to a 46% chance, and now we're back up to about a 70% chance. My point is they don't know. They're completely clueless. I don't know if you're going to see a September rate cut either. I kind of think you might not, because I think the next couple months of data are going to be hot. And if they stay hot, they're not going to touch this. So I wouldn't get in front of this. Now, here's the other thing. This is employment. Here's the one thing that really, this week for the first time, the Fed as a whole came out and said, until we see unemployment go up, we can't cut. They actually put that out there for the whole world to hear. Now, up to this point, they've been saying we need to see employment go the other direction and we need to see the economy cool and all these different things. They've said the message, but they haven't said the words. Until unemployment goes up, we're not going to cut rates. And that's what they finally said. So I thought that was super interesting. So for me, I'm almost looking at what they're alluding to is that if employment goes the wrong direction, if unemployment goes up, so more people lose their jobs, inflation will come down on its own because we won't be spending as much money. So this now becomes front and center. So what this means is around the first of every month, the jobs report gets released the first Friday of every month. That's when you're gonna start seeing rate movement, big time rate movement every month. So we'll see it again coming up in 2 weeks. And that's probably, unfortunately, if the jobs market is moving in the right direction, or I'm sorry, if it's moving in the wrong direction, you're gonna see rates go up again. Because the world has decided that's the trigger point for dropping rates. So, good news, bad news, right? We're all employed, but that's kind of a bad thing in this run. Texas is kind of hanging in there. We've still been looking at this. Mostly the West Coast is I would say hurting the most. Texas is still sitting at about a 4% clip. So we're running slightly above the norm. But remember we talked about last month, these numbers are probably gonna get better in the summer months because kids are finding jobs and teachers and seasonal workers are finding jobs. And so we actually think that the unemployment rate is probably gonna go down in the next month or so. So again, not moving in the right direction for us. Okay, and here's interest rates. Remember, green is good, red is bad. And you can see that we kind of bounced up here and got a little bit better here recently, which is awesome. We were sitting somewhere around, when we got this stuff, we were sitting like 7.5. So the last time we met, I think the average rate was like 7.4 and change. The good news is now we've moved back in the right direction, but we're still hanging out around 7. We have days where we can lock people at 6.99. We have days where we're locking them at 7.25. So just come on in. Oh, print. So we're just seeing that, unfortunately, this is not playing ball with us. Now, I'll throw something out there that just happened an hour ago, and that is, I think it was Citibank came out and said that they believe, oh, I'm sorry, not Citibank, Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae released their updated forecast on a couple things, so I'm gonna share that with you. What's up, ladies? It's good to see you. Thank you for coming.
Well, you're teaching, we're here.
Fran, so, by the way, I am incredibly honored that we have Fran in class with us today. So, it's good to see you. Oh, there you go. So Fannie Mae just came out this morning and they said they now expect interest rates by the end of the year to still be around 7. That's gross, right? I don't know if I fully buy the 7 range, but I definitely buy upper 6s. And we thought we might even see low 6s to a 5.99 by the end of the year, 6 months back. But what we didn't see was the inflation stall. So that's the challenge that we're running into. So this plays an even bigger role. Now here's the other piece. Remember, this is the line we keep talking about. This is that trend line. If it's high, where it is right now, it's up on the top, that means rates are probably too low. So we need to go back up a little bit more. So that's not awesome. That would keep us thoroughly in the 7+% camp if that actually happens. So we'll kind of see. We talked about it last time. You saw when they got down here that they were way overbought, or I'm sorry, oversold, which meant they probably needed to get better, and they did. They moved from 7.5 down to around 6.99, and now you can see we're going back the other direction. Okay. Here's the other thing that we're watching on a pretty regular basis. This number just came out this morning too, so I didn't get a chance to plug it in here. This is the applications on a weekly basis going back to the first of the year. So I kind of expanded this further this time than we have been in the past. And this line represents the start of March. So start of March usually is what? Start of the buying season, right? So from that point forward, this is the very first of the year. We always come back from the holiday really busy on new applications. Like everybody, pent up demand, I just got a cool Christmas gift, I'm gonna go buy a house. I don't know why they do that, but they do. So we always see that shoot up. Since then though, we saw massive moves down, not completely unusual, kind of seasonal because the exuberance of January wears off. But this line, usually the demarcation of, hey, we're gonna get better now, things are gonna take off. And you just haven't seen that. In fact, we had a couple weeks right here, this was going into spring break. We talked about that month, we were busy through spring break. But then since then, we've just been meandering up and down a little bit. And overall, apps aren't really moving very much. This morning, the purchase apps were down another like 1.2 or 1.5%. So that's okay. Like I'd rather than stay stable and be moving down a little bit versus completely dropping. But the problem is we're in summer, right? Like shouldn't we be busy? Yeah. We should be. Now, there's some theories out there that suggest that we're probably waiting with pent-up demand through the election. That's very true. That's very possible. There was a CNBC report that came out this morning that talked about how their Reuters, I don't remember which agency it was, but some government agency actually commissioned Reuters to do a full survey on what people think about the overall economy leading into the election. And it was very eye-opening. So I'll give you the 4 things that stood out to me. So number one, 56% of people, 56% felt like we were in a full-blown recession. Now, we're not, technically, right? And we're in a rolling recession. Certain industries are struggling, but other industries are doing really well. But 56% said we're in a full-blown recession. 56% of people said that unemployment was at a 50-year high. Well, I just showed you a slide that suggested unemployment is probably at close to a 50-year low, right? So they went the other direction. And 49% of people thought the stock market was significantly down for the year. It's up 11%. So all that tells me is we have a lot of people who don't pay attention to what's really going on in the world, right? And that's half of our country. So that's a big piece of why I think housing is a little slow right now, because half the country doesn't understand where we're at. And they think things are horrible right now, right? So this kind of reflects that a little bit, I think, also. That's why we're not seeing a lot of purchase apps come through. Okay, and you can see we're still at historical low. This goes back to 2000. I actually thought about bringing it back to 84 for you guys to see exactly how low it gets. We don't want to see that. So, but it is kind of interesting. All right, let's talk some interesting real estate news. So some fun things. Number one, this came out of NAR. This was based on the February numbers that came out. So here's where I say things start to get a little bit mixed. There's some opportunities for us if we go out and look at it. So let's talk first-time buyers. So in February, first-time buyers were up. So the dark blue is February 24 versus February 23. They were slightly down, but this month's number, I just told you guys, came out at 31%, 31 or 33, I can't remember the exact number. So first-time buyers still a third of the marketplace, let's just call it. So how many of you guys are marketing to first-time buyers? You should be. Like that is literally, I know Pam's like, that's all I do. But that's not our true. She does lots of other things. So that is a third of all deals. Now, in Fran's world and in the Pantuso team's world, a lot of cash buyers, right? So cash buyers were up to 33% in February. They were sitting between 28 and 30 for last month. So again, cash buyers are about a third of what's going on out there. First-time buyers are about a third of what's going on out there. What's left in the middle? Move-up buyers. So we're starting to see that we've been seeing that the only move-up buyers are the ones that have to move up, right? So nothing wrong with marketing to those past clients in that database, but the reality is you're missing a big segment if you're not marketing to that first-time buyer. So that's one piece of it. Distressed sales, look how tiny those are. There's nothing. Like we're not seeing any distressed sales right now. And what is out there is very, very limited. And then this is the one that caught my attention. The investors are starting to buy again. Why is that? Are y'all feeling that? Seeing that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of phone calls for DSCR loans, which is basically, low income loans on the investor side. We're seeing a lot of that right now.
Do you do DSCR loans?
Yeah, absolutely. Get calls all excited. She's like, oh, now I'm in. Let's go do it. So DSCR is super easy, guys. And so the investor community really coming back. The other thing that's interesting to me is from a mortgage perspective, the non-traditional mortgages that are out there that they're starting to try and push more and more of, most of it's investor related. So that tells you that the secondary market thinks investors are really kind of making a comeback here. So it's a big deal. What's the latest update on the state of Texas trying to knock out all the corporations buying? You guys heard anything lately? Okay, so by the way, you need to get that on your radar screen. Governor Abbott has proposed something. I don't know where this is going. I haven't seen enough research on it yet. He's proposed something, some type of bill that would limit corporations from buying homes for investment property going forward in Texas. And some of them would have to start divesting. I don't know if that's gonna happen or not. Have you heard anything, Captain? No? Okay. So there's something out there, there's a little bit of a push for that. Okay. Now, let's talk about where the money's coming from. So remember, first-time buyers are a third of the marketplace. And the second-time buyer is another buyer that we're seeing come in quite a bit with this type of problem. So where are they getting their money from? A lot of them are still saving from paychecks, but this one right here is one we've been talking about for a while. 36% are getting money from family right now. A big number. And we're seeing big numbers come through from family. So this opportunity right here is if there's that many people who are able to give their kids money for closings, those are your move-up buyers that don't want to move right now, right? That middle tier that we talked about, you can market to them for their kids. How many of you guys know if their kids are a buying age? Did you track them enough to know that? We're getting phone calls, and as I reach out to people, the ones that I know have kids that are at buying age, as I reach out to them on their anniversary dates, I'm telling them, hey, by the way, if your kiddo's thinking about buying a home anytime soon, let me know. And we're getting referrals based on that. So another opportunity to stop laughing. Brooke's gonna give her kids tons of money here in a little bit, right?
One of them.
You're gonna, yeah, that's right, just a later on.
It's a favorite one.
So that's a big piece of it. We're seeing a lot of retirement funds. We just had a client, Pam had a client this week that pulled out most of her money in retirement, put down on the house. Because she felt like owning home was better than doing that. And so we're seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing even some of my move-up buyers having to do this.
Is that putting down on a like primary home or an
Yeah,
investment?
at least it's a primary home. But yeah, and by the way, I'm not advocating that at all. If you ask me, I'd say that's a bad idea. We want to do as little as possible, but we're seeing it a lot. Part of the reason we're seeing it is because the stock market's up so much that people have got quite a bit more money sitting there than they used to, and so they feel comfortable pulling it out. But we're seeing a lot of that, and then we're seeing some inheritance start up. But this inheritance piece is the next thing you guys have to look for. Because the baby boomer generation, how much of the overall wealth in the United States is the baby boomer generation overall? 70%. 70%. These little millennial snots, I mean these great millennial kids, are about to be the richest generation in history because of inheritance. Did y'all know that?
I miss those people.
I don't get it, but I mean, they are.
I
So
don't spend it all.
I agree with you, Joe. You should spend it all. You should travel. And you know what? After today, you should buy something nice for your wife.
Spend it all, Joe.
Take her on
You
another
can't take it
vacation.
with you. Okay. And you don't want to leave it to your
Okay.
son,
Good
right?
answer.
That's not fair.
Okay.
Spend it. So that's what my dad keeps telling me, because you guys are getting nothing. I'm like, great. You should spend it. You should turn your AC off of 83 and spend money on it. So
I don't even know where 83 is.
no, my dad could not survive in my house because it's too cold. Okay, so what's holding renters back? Well, here's the thing. We have solutions for these top 4 items, and this is part of the reason why I want to put this up here today. So, number 1, available homes are too expensive. That's the one solution I don't really have, right? If you think they're expensive, I understand, and historically speaking, they are. But when was the last time you guys, excluding the Great Recession, when was the last time y'all saw home prices come down? Never. Okay, it's probably not going to happen. So let's move on past that one. I don't have a solution for that one other than look at history. In fact, I showed you guys not too long ago, in the last 92 years, home prices have retreated 7 of the last 92. And by the way, I think like 4, you catch me lying on this, I think 4 of those were 1% declines. So basically, you have like 3 years where home prices actually went down a material number. So if you think they're too expensive, I get it. If you're looking to buy 3 years, or if you're looking to buy and live in it for at least 3 years, you're gonna make money. You have a runway that's gonna make you money, especially in Texas, because you don't have enough homes. All right, ability to save for down payment. Pam, what's your favorite thing to do in mortgage? More than anything else?
Down payment assistance.
There you go. She didn't even know what that was. She actually did the right thing. Down payment assistance. There's so much first-time buyer and move-up buyer down payment assistance and programs coming out right now. It's mind-boggling. And it's in response to 1/3 of all buyers being new buyers. So the latest one that we mentioned yesterday in sales meeting is Chase's CRA program they gave to us, where they're dropping the interest rates like almost a full point to get these people into homes. Well, that's not helping with their down payment money, but it's making it a whole lot more affordable for them to buy a home, right? And so that's just one small example. T-Shack, we've talked to you guys about T-Shack before. The greatest thing about T-Shack is you can go out on their website, take a 1-hour online course, and then they'll plug you into their website and you get free advertising. I had an agent that called me last week and said, hey, remember when you told us about that a few months ago? Yeah, he goes, I just got my first deal offer. Free deal. That's not bad, right? So everything that's coming out right now, literally everything, is geared towards 3 things. First-time buyers, self-employed, investors. Now, these are the smartest people on Wall Street that are bringing this stuff out to you. They probably know something. So those are the 3 things we want to focus on. All right, ability to afford mortgage payments. You have a solution for that. We're getting a ton. In fact, I think most of the contracts that came through for April, not most, more than half of the contracts that came through for us in April for our entire office had 2-1 buy downs or 1-1 buy downs attached to them. Think about that. It makes a monster difference on your mortgage payment. So we have a solution for that one as well. Now, at some point, those mortgage payments will come down because rates will come down permanently. Bless you. But again, there's a solution for that. Mortgage rates are too high. Same conversation. It's a 2-1 buy down. It's no different. Or, I know I hate this piece of it, but the reality is, well, take home to a builder. Get a 4.99 rate. Somebody told us the other day, I think it was Lennar was offering a 4.25 interest rate. Guys, that's an inflation buster all day long. Like, that's a no-brainer. That client gets probably the best rate they're going to see for the next decade, frankly. It completely takes the whole rate conversation out the door. Now, and they have a brand new home, by the way, which is cheaper on insurance and cheaper on utilities. Like, if you can't afford that scenario as a first-time buyer, you're probably not gonna be able to buy a house. Does that make sense? Like, literally, that's the best of all worlds. So, and then you've got regular upkeep and maintenance and all that. Well, that's just part of life. You can't really change that. But my point is, out of the top 4 items that stop everybody from buying a home right now, you have solutions for 3. We just have to get it out, the word out, that you have solutions for all that. Now, right here though, last piece, lack of inventory was only 18%. So 82% of people think there's enough inventory on the ground. So sometimes we kind of make our own bed sometimes, and when we go out and tell everybody there's not enough inventory, it's really us promoting that narrative. It's not necessarily the right answer. So especially right now, because inventory is up so much versus the last 2 years, we look like we have a lot of inventory. We don't, by the way, to be fair, from 2019 to today, we're still off over 30%. So we're still not where we need to be, but we're getting closer. All right, I thought this was super interesting because this was basically who's affordable, what cities are affordable. And this is essentially based on your average income in the area versus your average payment. And we always talk about, part of what we do in here is make sure we debunk some of the myths. Well, the myth is Texas is cheaper, Texas is more affordable, and we've been talking about that now for 2 years. Look where we fall. If you're in red, you're not affordable. Now, here's where we make money on this though, right? And you guys have heard me say before, you guys have a really cool feature that we don't have, and that is that you can get referral compensation. You can refer stuff out to other agents if you have the right network. Look for the places that are green and make sure you have referrals in those areas, because that's where people are moving to, is the more affordable locations. What I thought was interesting is you got a little bit of West Texas, and then this right here is kind of the last bastion of hope for the South, which is that Mississippi, Alabama-ish type area. A lot of people move to those places. Anybody been through like Birmingham lately? You flew back in, right? You didn't drive?
Pardon me?
You flew back into Texas. You didn't drive.
I'm not from Birmingham though.
Not through Birmingham?
South Carolina.
Well, I know, but I mean, you didn't drive.
Oh, I didn't know.
You didn't drive through anything, okay. So if you've been through any of like Alabama, Mississippi lately, there's some really nice places that are really, really cheap. And that's where people are moving to. That's what we're seeing.
I just had a client buy 7 acres with a house that had about 3,000 square foot outside of Birmingham for $150,000.
$150,000? Wow,
Oh my gosh.
that's crazy. How are things in South Carolina? What do you got from an affordability standpoint?
I make houses that somebody is cheap. Well, they're not cheap, they're cheaply built.
Cheaply built.
Yeah, they're cheap. You know, I don't have a feel for it because, their real estate's so different from ours, and, so I just really don't know.
Okay,
They don't seem to be working very much.
really?
You know, the ones I've talked to,
Really?
like.
That's interesting.
Kind of slow, so.
Well, and I think part of it.
Lots of building, lots of it.
Lots of building, okay. Well, I've got a client that just moved out to North Carolina, they closed last week. North Carolina was not cheap, I was kind of surprised.
It surprised me what I got for what I had to pay.
Yeah,
We would consider it $150,000 David Winkle home. Below scale, David Winkle.
really? I'm surprised by that.
It's $4.5 million.
Wow.
I know.
But you don't have nearly the cost of living there either, though, right?
Very, very inexpensive.
Okay. And that's the number one thing that we're hearing out of people is how much cheaper it is to live in other places. So anyway, I just thought this was super interesting. So I like this. Remember the gray circles, guys? Even though they're not green, those are kind of average-ish. Those, look how much there is of that. Up through the Midwest, you've got through the Midwest is all expensive, but up here through, I would say Indiana, Ohio, places like that, Tennessee, we're still seeing a lot of people move that direction. Just really expensive here, really expensive out here, and then of course the East Coast, this is just a mess. This is Fran's world out here, that's South Carolina, North Carolina, which to your point is not super cheap.
It's beautiful there, the weather's nice.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Jason, what's up with the green in California?
I know.
Yeah.
Well, remember, I know I first saw that and I went, what the heck is this? But remember, this is based on average income and average payment. Their payments there are less for the same sales price that ours are here, and their people make
Higher
more.
income.
Right, they have higher income. Now, they have higher cost of living, state income tax that we don't have, so it evens out. If you're just looking at house payment versus income, they're a little bit better off. They're actually way cheaper on insurance and way cheaper on taxes than we are. Now, the insurance piece is a mess.
Yeah.
We've talked about that, but I have a client literally moving here right now from California. He said they're spending about $2,000 a year on earthquake insurance and about another $2,500 a year on regular home insurance. He's selling his home for $2.9 million. So, anyway, that's kind of what they're seeing out there. But gray space, guys, find some referral partners because you can get business out of that. All right, this one's the other one. We've been talking about this for so long. So this is, what's it take? So basically, all the states, it takes at least $100,000 annually to buy the average home in that state. Which, by the way, Texas is $100,629. So we finally crossed that barrier. What's our average sales price in Texas? It's like mid threes.
Yeah.
So you have to earn $100,000 to buy a 350 house in Texas to qualify. And when you look at it, the only places that are more expensive are the far northeast and the west coast. Isn't that kind of surprising? I can see that much, but look how cheap all this area is right here. We've got clients moving to Indiana. I've got clients in Missouri. I've got clients in Kansas. I mean, those are the places where people are going from an affordability standpoint. So again, our opportunity is find referral partners out here. You need it. Arkansas. I've been saying for a while, my kids at University of Arkansas, it's beautiful up there, and it's a lot cheaper than it's here. All right, I thought this one was interesting because I think I'm gonna put my foot down and say no dice, but how many people are planning on aging in home? Look at the number.
Lots,
It's a huge number,
like
right?
90%.
Yes. In fact, 71% plan on it, 7% have already done it. That's 78% are aging in home, right? Now, what does that mean in real estate? Well, we can't sell their home if they don't move out. And this is a big piece to our inventory problem. It's not just the interest rate side of things, because a lot of those homes are free and clear. It's that they're not planning on moving anytime soon. So this is why I really like that. The rest of these are all just small numbers for the most part.
What percentage of houses are owned by boomers?
Oh, well, I got data on it, and I'll maybe put it in my next slide. I can't remember the exact number, but it's a huge number, and more importantly, much of them are free and clear.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's like 40 to 50% of houses are owned by boomers. I mean, it's a huge, huge number, and they're not selling. They're not planning on selling. So, and I just looked like my grandmother was 92 when she passed earlier this year. She was living at home till the day she died. In fact, both my grandmothers were living at home till the day they died. That was just their plan. So we're not going to see a lot of inventory come up from the boomer cycle. It's just not going to be out there. Okay, and then house poor is a real thing. This is the last couple slides for you. I saw this as a great visualization. So this is how many people can go buy a home. Let me rephrase that. It's the average number of listings that would represent less than 30% of your gross monthly income. So if you make $10,000 a month, would your payment be $3,000 or less? Is the easy way to think about that. And we're at 16%. 16%. And if you look back to the low point was 18 to 37, but we were as high as 50 just in the last decade. So the point of that is, it's hard for people, if they're spending 30% of their income on their house payment, guys, that's why we're struggling so much right now, because how much does Uncle Sam take off the top? For most people, if you can afford to buy a home, they're taking off about 20 to 24%. Let's just call it 24. And then you're spending another 30% or more on your house payment. And now you've got 55 to 60% of your income is gone between taxes and housing. And in fact, one of the clients that we closed just last week, I noticed her debt, it was not my client, but happened to be in our loan file. Her debt ratio was 49% for just the house payment. So after she pays taxes, she's got about 30% of her income left over in order to live outside of her house payment. So this is the part, and look, and for those who've been doing this for a long time, and I'm gonna include myself in that, I have a hard time saying this, but my gut instinct is something has to give somewhere, because it's not affordable, right, Fran? I mean, we haven't seen it this bad in a long time. So I just feel like there's gotta be something that's gotta change. So and that's a big piece of it. And when you look at the actual chart, so 16%, again, the average median sales price is $427, and that's based on a 6.8 rate. Well, rates are higher than 6.8. So 16% is probably not even the right number. It's probably 13 or 14% or 14. So it's a big deal. Okay, and then let's end on a couple of fun things. So Gen X, by the way, so that's the next one coming up. Where do they want to live? Texas actually hit top 10. Surprisingly, they were number 4, but that was San Antonio. How many of you guys thought San Antonio was a hotbed of Gen Xers? Right? George Strait lives down there. That's what I know from my experience. But so I thought that was interesting. But more importantly, look at again different places you can make money, ways you can make money. Tennessee, Florida. Guys, I've been doing business in Tennessee and Florida for a decade. We do a couple deals every single year in both those states, at least. And it's people moving from Texas. So as you're building your network, like we used to say when we went to family reunion, you should take a box of business cards and hand them out to everybody. Now's as good a time as any. And then you got California and Nevada, but let's face it, those guys are gonna move out of there eventually. You know, it's cool because it's got great weather and it's beautiful, but the bulk of it is from Texas over the southeast. Now, on the other side of things, where do they not want to live? And surprisingly, Austin made the list. I would have never guessed that. Like, I would have flipped that in a heartbeat.
I figured that's why they were moving to San Antonio, because it was more affordable than Austin, but still close to Austin.
Maybe
Austin's
what
been
they're-
taken over by a younger generation,
know.
and it's awful.
I know, I agree. And maybe what they're doing is they're moving from Austin to San Antonio. You are right, but they're moving from Austin instead of
So
from
who's
someplace
the
else.
Gen X? Who are they?
Gen X is
Like
right behind
mid-40s.
millennials.
Yeah.
Like
So-
mid-40s, so.
Yes.
Stephen-
Well, Nope, that's not the one. I was gonna say, I have a slide for that. I'll put it in next time. It is like 25-ish to 40-ish, somewhere right around there if I'm right. Am I right, Brooke? That's about the right time frame?
And so millennials.
No,
You
it's
know.
no,
they're older.
I think it's Yeah, like they're
68 through 80.
Yeah,
Eighty.
Oh, that's right. More regression.
Yeah, they're like
65
Before-
to 80.
Before-
65 to 80.
1965 to
Okay.
18.
Here you go,
Okay.
65
So
to
it's
80.
people
Perfect.
45 to
So it's me.
59.
There you go.
Yes.
You nailed it.
I was gonna say, but I.
So, all right, so
That's
that means 45 to 55, 60, somewhere there?
It's
Why would you-
44 to 59.
44 to 59.
Yeah.
Okay. So why would you want to go
But
to San
it's-
Antonio? Like, I don't want to go to San Antonio. It's
Because
okay.
it's been crowded in Austin. The
No.
traffic is horrible.
And all the stupid millennials are in Austin, right? Is that what it is? What's the Gen X, what's the generation after the millennials?
Gen Z.
Gen Z.
Gen Z.
That's your
I think
boy.
it's
That's my
Like
voice.
Hayden and, yeah.
Yeah, they're not very smart.
I mean.
They gotta get to 25.
That's me,
That's you, Gen Z?
Gen Z.
Gen Z?
I'm not very smart.
I'm not very smart. Yeah. Well, men aren't smart until they're at least 25 and married to a good woman. So if you didn't get
I thought it was
both
like 55 and married.
well, maybe 55 and married. So that's true. So, all right. And then last couple of things for you. So there is no foreclosure problem. It's not going to happen. I had another agent ask me a couple weeks ago, should I be brushing up on my foreclosure stuff because someone told them in a class they needed to do that. But you're wasting your time. There's not any foreclosure activity happening out there. The guys who are actually in foreclosure is 0.3%. Which, if you think about it logically, of course there's only 0.3 in foreclosure because your rate's 2.5, your payment's $1,500 and you can't get an apartment for that. So you're gonna do everything you can to pay that. So, all right, let's talk home sales and get you guys through a couple things. So new home sales numbers literally came out this morning. So that red box, that little red star up there is different than what you see printed because I printed this up last night. 4.14 million units annualized. That was actually down from last month. That was a surprise. Nobody expected that. Everybody thought it was gonna be a little bit higher. And that makes sense because rates bounced up. And we've been looking at the data that says the buyers are kind of sitting on the sidelines right now. So this number makes sense to me. But you can see we're still hanging out. In fact, we're now down to almost where we were when the pandemic started and we shut the world down. So huge pent up demand still sitting out there. When's it gonna break loose? That's the big question of the day. If you look at the South in particular though, we were down 5% in the South. Which is kind of an odd thing. If you look at the local stuff, because remember all I care about is the local numbers. So here's your actual local. Fort Worth Metro, so this is anything that touches Tarrant County, off 7% for the month of April. So if you saw the market come backwards a little bit, you were right. It was down 7% for there, down a little over 7% on the Dallas side. Now remember, Dallas is still twice as big as Fort Worth. So you're getting way more, and again, remember when we say Dallas, we're talking all the counties, and the same thing in Fort Worth. Dallas side is still way, way busier than the Fort Worth side. So if you want opportunity, you need to be marketing that direction. There's double the business over there. But both of us were down 7%. Pending home sales for April won't come out until next week, but we're thinking right now they're gonna be off about 2%. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I think that number could be worse than that. Because if the sales came down in April, it doesn't, to me, I would think the pending contracts probably came down even further, and that's kind of what we've been seeing in our world. All right, now, pending sales, technically for our space for the month of April, this is live data, down 2.5% in the Tarrant County side, and then we were off about 1% on the Dallas County side. So not too bad, in fact, probably trending better than the nation, which is a good sign for us, but not by much. We're just kind of floating around a little bit out there. Average days on market back down to 33, but locally what we care about, down to 38. So we're still above the market. You know, we've been trailing way above the national average for a while now, but look how much we're coming down. We've dropped a lot. We were literally 10, 12, 15 days higher just a few months back. So that means that properties are moving quicker right now, which I think is a good sign. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're moving more, but we're moving them faster. And look at Dallas County, they're down to 32 days. That's a big drop, right? So that, now, by the way, what happens when we start getting into that 25, 30-day range? We have less than a month's worth of properties on the market. Well, that's when things get a little wonky and, you know, we pay over listing it. So this is something to kind of watch and see what happens, but we are at least moving in the right direction technically. And then there's those foreclosure data still trending very, very low. So no foreclosures coming on. All right, now, home prices, different conversation. This is actually the March number. Forget about it. 4.8 doesn't matter anymore. Today's number came out, 5.7. So nationally, we were up 5.7% on sales price. Now, here's where things get interesting on my side of things. So Tarrant County, we were up 1%, 1.7. So not as much as the rest of the nation. And then Dallas County, flat. Now, we've talked about it before. We haven't given the sellers or the buyers a reason to come back in and buy right now. So because of that, we're not seeing our home prices move. In fact, we've been kind of flat. Look at where we were. So the blue line is 23. Look at where we were through last year. We're kind of tracking about the same, right? A smidge higher. But nationally, we're up 5.7. So that's going to be the headline number that's out there. All right, average sales to list, we're still only coming off 1 to 2%, but we are still coming off. So we don't have to pay above list in most cases. What percentage of homes sold above list price last month? Anybody remember? Anybody know? Do you see the number yet? It's 20 to 25%, somewhere in that ballpark. So
Above list price?
above list price. So you will find some that are just unicorns that everybody wants and they go above list. But for the most part, we're coming off 1 to 2%. Here's the number within the number though. Pam, how many of your clients get seller concessions, percentage-wise? Pretty high number?
Yeah, they're getting, I mean, I would say 90% of all my contracts have some kind of seller concession, whether it be a 2-1 buy down or just seller concessions in general.
Yeah,
We're
I would
getting
agree.
something.
We're seeing the same thing. We're getting huge amount of concessions on our deals. And so it's not just that we're getting 1 to 2% off on price, we're getting a concession to match. So again, if you're looking for sales opportunities right now, we need to let the buyers know that sellers are negotiating, guys. That's a huge win for us because next year this time, we're not gonna talk about that anymore.
Well, I
We're
think
talking about
that
sellers holding firm.
It's having that conversation of like, how does it make it more affordable for the buyer right now to keep them in the market?
Yeah,
It's the 2-1 buy down right now, so it's educating, and you would not believe the listing agents that don't know what a 2-1 buy down is still,
Yep.
you know, so it's, hey, if you want your house to sell, it's been sitting there for 45 days, then you need a buyer, you know, so let's just buy down the rate and make this happen, and so they're like, okay, let's do it.
Yep.
So after I explain it to them, so.
for sure. I've had more problems with you guys doing too good a job and getting more in concessions than I can actually allow in the last 90 days. I've had to make more phone calls today. I'm sorry, you can't do that. You can only go to 12, not the 17 you got. Because I'm just shocked that they're getting those kinds of numbers. So by the way, PSA, call your loan officer and make sure 17 is okay, because it won't be with everybody. Dallas County, same thing, down 1.5%. So these are, again, really good in my opinion that we're getting more off of our houses. Now, here's the national inventory number. Officially, Texas up 6.2%, the national average was 5.7. Locally though, this is where the green shoots start to pop up. So before we get to the local stuff, just to give you an idea, we're now technically, this is now April, and April's higher also, we don't have that data in here, but we're now at 6 months of growing inventory straight. That's not bad, guys, we'll take it. I mean, you gotta have a win somewhere, but the problem is nationally, we're still at this number, but locally, look where we're killing it. This is where Texas is leading the charge a little bit. Fort Worth Metro was up 23% year over year on inventory. Like that's the high, we're almost at the highest level of inventory since, well, technically fourth quarter of 23, we had a pretty good chunk of inventory. But prior to that, we haven't been anywhere close to that number. And on the Dallas County side, look at that. 34% increase in inventory. So there is, again, an opportunity. Dallas is way higher than we've been in the last 4 years on inventory. I'm sorry, yeah, 4 years, since 2019. So I know we're still low, we're not where we need to be, and the quality's not necessarily there, but we've still got so much more to work with. So that's a good thing, and we need to get the buyers to understand that. At some point, we think this number may continue to climb. At some point, if it does, guys, this is where we see prices start to come down. Because if you've got more inventory and you have more competition as a seller, what do you do to attract buyers? We drop price, right? We're seeing it now. The data doesn't support a big drop yet. We're seeing 1.5%, 2% off the list price. But the number within the number that Pam and I are talking about is we're all getting concessions too. So if you factor that in, we're probably seeing 5%, 6%, 7% off a list. That's a pretty good number, right? We get a little bit more inventory up, that number's gonna get even bigger. And so that's what honestly, that's what I'm hoping for. Because as long as you're not planning on selling your home anytime soon, you'd rather see prices come down and bring buyers back in the marketplace, right? Okay, now, age of inventory also continues to go down. So Fort Worth, we're down 3 days year over year. The Dallas side was down about 4 days. So if we're running 40 days of inventory, and we're running 32 days to sell a home, that means, because this, by the way, takes into consideration the time it takes to close the loan, which is about 21 days. That means the bulk of your homes are selling in about 19 to 20 days, is what that boils down to. So if it's priced well and you're willing to negotiate, you will move it in about 3 weeks. So which one of you guys said a minute ago, if you've been sitting on the market for 45 days, maybe you should do something and come down on your price. This is a good little chart for those sellers to say, hey, technically speaking, you should have sold about 3 weeks if we were right. If we were priced right, everything was good, and you're willing to negotiate. If you've been on the market more than 3 weeks, we might want to consider doing something to bring buyers in. Because officially, the average is about 3 weeks to sell them. All right, and then new listings. By the way, this is the other number I really care about because this is what continues to drive the active inventory. New listings on the Tarrant County side up 22% year over year. And on the Dallas County side, 26%. So we're still seeing way more homes come on the market, and we're seeing more homes still on the market out there for buyers to choose from. As long as this number keeps trending up, we're gonna see inventory continue to climb. And that's what I'm hopeful is that number will come up all the way through the summer months. If we can get it to come up all the way through July, that'll set us up, because if you look at the historical trend, seasonally, we start coming back down after about July, right? So if we can get them pumped up a little bit more, that'll leave the inventory a little higher for the fall and the winter, which will be good for us. All right, price drops. Still only about 1.4%, I'm sorry, about 7%, which is about 1.5% more than what we saw last year. So 7% of homes are getting price drops here in the Tarrant County side, almost 8% on the Dallas County side. So people are listening, they are moving prices down a little bit, just not very fast, unfortunately. Weeks of supply, we're down to 14, so we're basically at a 5-month supply based on what's moving, which this number getting close to 6 months is why we're seeing prices come down a little bit, because people are getting a little worried about it. And on the Dallas County side, we're also sitting at about 14.5, so nothing special there. All right, let's talk buyer demand and rates, and then we'll get you guys out of here. So, yes, rate 7.09 as of Friday, probably 7 1/8 or so today. They've crept up a little bit for the last 2 or 3 days. We had this nice little jaunt down, which helped us out a little bit. But I think really the bottom line is until this number gets to 6 something on a regular basis, we're gonna see the buyers be a little bit hesitant. So what's driving that, I told you we're gonna track this spread this year. And here's one thing that is really positive. I wanna see this continue next month. So this is the spread last month. This is that spread of 2.81 over the 10-year treasury is how we get our rates. This month, that number's down to 266. That doesn't sound like a huge move, but 15 basis points in 30 days is actually quite a bit. If we could see that come down another 10 or 15 basis points in the next month or two, we'd start to see rates solidly back in the 6s. And that's before rates actually technically move down, right? So remember I told you there's 2 ways we're gonna get rates to drop this year. One is the Fed will drop rates at some point, maybe once or twice only, so that's kind of floating away a little bit. But you only get about 1/3 of what he does. So if he drops 100 basis points, we're getting about 30, 33 bips out of that. That's all we're getting. This is basis point for basis point or dollar for dollar. So this spread thing is way more important to us. And this is our problem. Remember, it averages 1.75. That's what it should be at. So we're still 90-something basis points over where it should be. Keep your
Jason,
fingers crossed it's moving in the right direction.
how do you explain it still being so high? I mean, before I thought it was because the expectation was we're still going up So they factor
Was.
that in. But now we sort of know it's probably not going up more. So why is it not?
In my opinion, it's two things. One is greed, and one is the cost of everything has moved up. So to answer your question a little more fully, so last quarter, every independent mortgage banker who closed a deal lost $2,100 per transaction. Think about that, guys. We go out and write a loan and we lose $2,100 writing that loan. We would have been better off putting our money in the bank, right? So part of the problem is the secondary market, which buys all these, they're experiencing the same thing. It's employee costs, it's expenses to close the transaction, it's everything in that number. So this number is probably gonna stay elevated as long as costs stay elevated.
Why did that go up? I mean, it's been 1.7 for 20 years. What?
Just the inflation we've seen in the last 4 years. That's literally it. That's all that's driving that up. Now, I think that's about half the story. The other half is greed, because we talked about this before. So you guys have seen this. McDonald's doesn't really have a dollar menu anymore, do they? I think it's like a $2 or $3 menu minimal. Well, at some point there, by the way, they did come out recently and say, they came out, Target just came out and said this, Walmart just came out and said it. Consumers done. Like, we're having to drop prices on things. Kroger, I think, announced they're dropping prices on like 5,000 items or something like that. So the consumer's done spending and we need to bring prices down. But is McDonald's gonna go from a $3 menu to a $1 menu? Probably not. They're gonna go to a $2 menu, right? And so, because they can, because we've been paying that for 3 years. So I think half of this is greed. The secondary market's getting some money on this, and why give it back? We've been doing it to you for 2.5 years. So I think they're gonna leave it out there for a while. But I do feel like that if the economics of the loan world come back around, you get about half of that money back. So maybe we get another 50 bips out of this, which is what I've been planning on all along, about 50 bips worth of benefit. So, okay. Now, here's the other thing too, guys, positive stuff. If you look at showings for, and this is March to March because they haven't put the April numbers out yet, but except for these 3 years right here, we're still higher on showings than we were in the previous 3 before the pandemic. So there's still activity out there. So again, we kind of make our own narrative sometimes. So the narrative is, oh my gosh, it's really, really slow. I think it is slow. I'm not debating that fact at all, but we still have more buyers in the marketplace than we had back here. We just don't have as much as we had the last 3 or 4 years. So we don't think about it that way. And by the way, to be fair, the 2020, March 2020 was when the pandemic happened, right? We shut the world down at spring break. So I think that what you're gonna see, and then the world exploded after May. I think the comps are gonna be a little harder to beat in 2020. So really you gotta go back to 19 and 18 and say, well, we're showing more than we were in 19 and 18. But remember, 19 and 18 weren't great years. You guys remember those were tough years. People were really struggling, rates had gone up a little bit, and sales were coming down. So we're still higher than those years. So it could be a lot worse for certain. And then here's I love leaving this in there just because I think they're completely full of bunk. But here's what Fannie Mae said they thought rates would be at the end of the year as of a month ago, 6.4. And just today I told you they came out and said they think they're gonna be right around 7. So this number keeps going up. This number for Fannie Mae was, I think, 6.1 or 5.9 the first time I showed you this chart in January. Then they bounced to 6.4 and now they're at 7. So the bad news is if you think you're waiting on rates to get cheaper to make our business better, it's probably not gonna happen soon. And we know the election's not gonna influence it a whole lot one way or another. Remember, we pulled the data for you for the last elections back to 1920. And yes, rates do technically get cheaper in most of them, but it's by such a tiny amount, it's not gonna matter a whole lot. So that's the one thing I'm a little bit worried about. Right now, they're not forecasting low 6s until sometime around next summer.
Yeah.
I think that number is probably, I think these numbers may be somewhat in line. This kind of lines up more with what I've been telling you guys all along. I think we'd be in the low 6s with the occasional touch of a 5.99, somewhere in that ballpark. So, all right, and there's our buyer demand meter at the end of the day. So still very weak buyer demand, just not a whole lot going on with buyer front right now. But I should put a giant asterisk next to that, way better quality. Way better quality, at least in my world, hands like.
What about say Mr. Castleman's over there?
Castle loan. No, seriously. So Pam's got this narrative that I do higher end clients, but here's the problem with her narrative. Most
You
months,
just closed a doghouse for us.
exactly.
He made a doghouse.
My average loan amount is lower than hers. Now, to be fair,
They're
her
buying a $3
clients
million house and putting 2.
exactly. My guys are buying $1 million home, putting $200,000 down. Pam's are buying $200,000 and taking out an extra loan for $220,000. So that's a different story.
Please,
But we do them all, so we'd love to see all of them. But yes, it's funny because that's the narrative she's been preaching. But for a year, she's been kicking my tail on average lot size.
And most
So-
of the buyers I see are first time.
Yeah.
They're really trying to take advantage of the market where they can negotiate, because I'm over educating right now, because if they wait for every other buyer to come back to market, they won't be able to compete. We saw it in COVID. It's a supply and demand. You don't need a crystal ball for that. So it's literally trying to educate these people as much as possible, like, okay, let's do the 2-1 buy down, let's get creative. There's some community lending products out there that'll help you save, because if they wait, our little
They're in trouble.
FHAs or VAs are not gonna be
They're gonna be
able
up
to buy.
against the people that are waiting.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them waiting. So the other thing I'm gonna throw out there to you guys is an opportunity. We've kind of talked about this before, but on a very small scale, but I'm telling you, you need to get in on this. The amount of parents who are buying rental homes today that they intend on giving or selling to their kids tomorrow is huge. It's getting to be bigger and bigger and bigger every month. And the story is all the same. Apparently there's like a support group on Facebook for this or something, I don't know. But the thought is, if I don't buy the home now for my kiddo, if I don't spend $400 today for my kid who's in college or in high school, if they wanna come back here and live when they're done, it'll be $500, $600, and they won't be able to afford it, right?
Live with me forever.
And they'll live with me forever. It's not a bad strategy. I'm kinda, that scares me. I know, that scares me enough. I may get in on this track. So, I've talked to my
We
wife.
already did.
Yeah.
I know you did, so
You know,
that's right.
buying in Arkansas is a great idea.
I know.
I have a friend who bought while her daughter was in school, her roommates paid the mortgage,
Yeah,
and then when they bought it, a, fixer.
Yeah.
And she's good at that. And then by the time they sold it, they probably close to double what they paid for it.
yeah, I believe
And
it.
that's
Well, the word is kind of out on places like Arkansas. I think the word is out on places that are prettier than Texas, to be fair. And people are starting to go that direction. It's not as cheap as it used to be, but there is still money to be made in those spots. I still get a drip campaign from a guy in Arkansas because I'm kind of thinking about that for my kiddos in college. And it's mind-boggling to me the amount of homes you can buy for a cheap price. I just can't get them close enough to campus, because remember, I have boys.
Yeah.
So if you have to drive more than 5 to 10 minutes, they're just not going to class. So I know my kids well enough to know this is not, and the stuff that's close to university is expensive.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge I'm running into. But you can buy, and here's the thing, the payment's really cheap up there. If I buy $300 to $350 up there, my mortgage payment with 25% down is like $2,000. It's pretty affordable, right? That's not bad.
A 3-bedroom.
Yeah.
Jason, next month, could you have some signs for beach property in Mexico?
Yes, we're gonna look at that also.
Leslie has one.
No,
She just
Leslie
said.
has one?
I know, it's
She
a
really-
little out of my price range.
What do they want for it?
3 million.
3 million.
Waterfront.
20 acres.
Just write a check. It's good.
I'm sure Mexico bridges are really nice.
They are really nice. And you fully trust Mexico not to take that property from you. So, like, that's my
Everything's
beat.
fine until.
Everything's fine.
It's
You
probably
should-
a land lease.
Yeah.
That's right. It is a land lease, actually. I think it is.
Yeah,
I think it is, literally, especially if it's on the water.
yeah.
They don't let you own if you're a foreigner, so. But anyway, all right, so that's what we got for you guys. So there's opportunities. We just have to go out there and dig at it a little bit. We're gonna do the same thing. I almost think we reinvent ourselves every month on something because it's whatever the trend is right this moment. So right now, 2-1 buy downs, lots of seller concessions, lots of down payment assistance, lots of guys struggling for affordability, so we're searching for answers there. And there's lots of opportunities coming out for that, and we're still seeing investors. So those are the things we're focused on right now. Hopefully you guys can pick some of that out there too, so.
But Jason, you're talking about parents buying their kids' house. I listed one in Grapevine, and this lady bought it, and she took money out of the market. She got plenty of money. She took money out of the market because she felt that would be a better investment over time. And she's going to fix it up and rent it to her son.
Yep, I'm seeing that a lot too, by the way.
She's
We're
done
gonna
that
rent
with
it
3
too.
sons.
Yeah,
She
Market
buys the
value
property and she rents it to them.
I like it.
Market value rent or like mom rent?
Probably.
In my house,
Market
dad
value.
rent is like market value plus 20%. So,
I read an article that says when you do that, to go ahead and put your child on that mortgage as well to help them build
Okay, so I'm glad
Tell
you
me
mentioned
about
that. You can do that, and so I think there's two pieces of that. So number one, to finish your thought, helps them build credit, build a credit profile, they have home ownership, all of that. By the way, from an estate planning perspective, that's probably an easier way to go also. But the other thing that a lot of people don't understand is, well, two things. The simple one is, if I put the kiddo on the loan in the first place, they are a primary resident of that home, and you get primary resident rates and down payments. So instead of doing investment property at 7.5 with 25% down, I'm doing primary residence at 6.99 with 5% down. Like, it's a massive difference, and the fees are cheaper. So that's a nice little tweak that you need to talk to people about as they're asking about this.
Does it matter the percentage? Like they own?
No, doesn't matter. If they're on and they're gonna live there, you're good. Now remember, that means they have to have credit. They don't have to have income. They have to have credit in order to qualify. The other thing that nobody knows about, and I've got a deal right now that we're kind of working through this on, is if your kid can't buy the home because they can't afford it or their credit's really bad, or your aging parents can't afford to buy the home for a similar reason, most of the time in that space we see their income's not real high, you can buy the home for them without putting them on at all, and you can be it can be a primary residence for you, or treated like a primary residence for you. So I'll keep my current home, don't touch it, don't move on, but I wanna buy something for my parents at some point. As long as I can prove that they can't afford the home or they can't buy it because of credit, I can buy it as a primary residence without them being on it at all, put my 5% down and get a good rate. And a lot of people don't understand that that's available out there. So there's a couple of ways. So if you really are gonna be in that camp of, I'm gonna buy my kids this house, if they're, like my kids are in high school and college, so it's too early for them, but if they were already out and working and you thought I would do this, put them on the loan, do it in their name in some way, shape, or form. If you can't do that, prove to me they can't buy it, and you can still buy it as a primary, way better terms. So there's, again, little nuances here and there for us to be able to help people out, and that's a big thing right now. We have a lot of parents calling us. I would say 10 to 15% of my phone calls are, I'm buying this for a family member.
Is there a max loan amount on that? Because obviously it's like $2 million house, so my kid can afford it.
No, that's a good idea, actually. Leave it to Brooke to come up with a way around it. No, 766, because it's gotta be a conforming loan. But conforming loans are gonna go up again next year. You're probably gonna be closer to 800 next year. So.
So you're saying
not
like
bad
if there's a parent or an adult who is a grandparent, whatever,
Yeah.
can't afford the house,
Yep.
their child could buy the house as a primary
Yep,
because she can't afford it.
correct.
And
Correct.
so you're saying the limit is 766, so
For the loan amount?
For the loan amount. So you can buy 2 million as long as you put down $1.25 million, right? And we're getting it a lot with people. Remember we said 78% of older Americans want to age at home. They don't want to go anywhere else. Well, what's happening is the kids are bringing them close to them. So I've got these clients who are more well off than most. You know, they're in $1 million, $2 million homes. And they're going, I just want to buy my parents a $500,000 home 4 minutes down the road from me. This is the way they're doing it. Because they don't want to take the money out of the markets and dump 25% in and get a high rate and high fees. Call it investment property.
I've got
So-
that situation, I think.
And that's, look, all the things that we talk about as opportunities, guys, they may not be really big opportunities, but if you got one extra deal a year out of it, I mean, the average sales price around here, well, around here's a lot higher, but the average sales price in Texas is over $350,000. That's over $10,000. Like one extra of these deals a year, guys, you make an extra 10 grand. That's not bad, right? 2 or 3, you make 20 or 30. 20 or 30 is a big difference. So every little thing counts. That's kind of what we're looking for right now, is every little piece counts for us too. What other questions do you guys have?
I heard the VA may be coming out in the next few days, some type of solution about the
NAR
the
settlement?
NAR settlement.
I hope so.
They
We're
have
running
to.
up against the clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to. Are you guys, all right, so the stories I've heard for the last month from y'all has been, this is no big deal, and my clients are like, what's the big deal about this? Have you guys, what are y'all's experiences? Has anybody even asked you about it?
Not since it got
Yeah.
pushed.
Almost everybody. Yep.
And are you having any trouble getting through it?
Yep.
It's about education.
Correct. That was the latest agent that told me about it this week, said the same thing. He's like, he goes, I've had probably half a dozen people ask me about it, and after I'm done explaining it, they're like, I don't really understand how this impacts me anymore.
Agents are freaking out the most. She's
Agreed.
freaking out.
There's no reason for that though. I mean, it's just a conversation.
Well, I had, I went on a listing appointment when I was here before, and the guy said, well, with that big lawsuit, he said, I understand you work for free. Yeah, I said, and I'm starting starting that when you work for free.
Good for you. And his response was,
At the
And
end of
I'm
the
gonna
day,
charge you more because you're annoying.
for you, it's 10%.
we call that PETA fee, and it's called pain in the ass. And we literally put that on closing documents 25, 30 years ago when I started this business. I kid you not. The guy who taught me that put PETA right on the closing document. So it might have been your dad's, long as we're not your dad's client.
Yeah.
So there is a guy around here that everybody knows, I will not name his name, that actually taught me that. And he worked very closely with your dad. Say what? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, she knows exactly. So put a PETA fee on there. Charge a little extra money. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just not, my thought is we're just not hearing any problems with it right now. So everybody's been able to get through it pretty easily. I've had a couple of people say that the sellers tried to negotiate down on bigger houses, and they did come down a little bit, but not a whole lot, and the seller was totally cool. So I just don't think it's a big deal, and hopefully the VA is gonna come out with something in the near future, because they've got 60 days to get it right at this point. So there will be something that comes out of that.
They're up against the wall.
They really are. But it's the VA, so they're kind of wonky anyway. All right, anything else, then we'll get you guys out of here. Thank you for coming, guys. We really appreciate you being here. So, don't have a good afternoon. Thank you. It's gonna rain here in the next few minutes, right?
We're thinking that's, yeah. We're all over the place, so we're not like, we're more
Alright.
teams that like me.
By the way, I want to brag on my kid for a second. I have a 20-year-old kid that when he came back from college this year, I told him, he said he was gonna go get a job bartending like he did last year. He made about $3,000 last summer bartending. I said, it's time for you to get an adult job. Why don't you get something that's really hard, like selling cars? And he looked at me and he goes, they don't give 20-year-old college kids. I go, just see what you can do. He got hired at Vandergrift Toyota on his own to sell cars. And he's been on the sales floor for 4 days. He sold 3 cars so far. That's pretty funny. So he's like, oh my God, every day he comes home with a different story about something he learned.
Pinky ring one day.
He is gonna be hearing. He's already informed me that he's buying an upgrade for his truck. I'm like, that's fine as long as there's no loans and I don't have to pay $1.
Love
You
to
do
hear
whatever
that.
you want.
And
Go
you're
do it.
off my insurance.
That's exactly right. You're off my insurance. Anyway, I'm every day it is a new story and it's cracking me up every time I go home. So he just sent me a text of a truck he sold today. He's sold a $70,000 Tundra to the guys. Good job. So
That's so good for him.
I told him, I said, you'll learn more in the next 90 days than you learned your first 2 years of college.
Oh,
Yeah.
Hands down, right?
You can
So-
People in networking.
That's right. And his younger brother, who's 17, he's about to be a senior in high school. He's like, when can I start selling trucks? That's a good job. So, but yeah, I think, yeah, it will be fun. And their average sales guys over there make between 8 and 10 grand a month.
Wow.
So can you imagine if he actually pulled, I'm not saying he's gonna pull that off, but can you imagine if he did? He'd be rich going back to school. And I don't pay for $1 of his lifestyle, so
Well,
he's super
he
excited.
might drop out of college if he does.
No, he won't either. No, he won't either.
Drag his ass
No,
across the
he-
stage like
No,
I
it's
did.
not.
Yeah, no, that will not happen under any circumstances. We will not allow that. So, but don't say that again. No, I'm just kidding. All right, you guys go out here. Go have fun. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.